All right. So yes, I mean, when we talk about decrement indices, indeed we have to talk about how traders ultimately hedge their books, and so either you create a very vanilla product on a vanilla index with a vanilla payoff, and in that case you can hedge with vanilla options, right? Or you create an index that is not vanilla, and you have to make it hedgeable in some way, right? So imagine that I create an index on some stocks that I like, for instance, right? Predicting the dividends or hedging the dividend risk will be more difficult. So that's one thing. So if I create such an index, but with a decrement, I will fix the dividends. I think we will talk about the mechanisms a bit later. But basically, this is the idea. I want to remove from my books as a trader the dividend risks that I cannot hedge or that are difficult to hedge. 2020 was really a turning point for I would say for the structured product industry generally, but even more for those decrement indices indeed. So we remember 2020, right? There was the story of 2020. We may remember that it was a COVID time, of course, right? So the companies in January 2020 announced the dividends based on the 2019 earnings. All was very well until COVID really came into Europe, that lockdowns were announced, and that governments announced also subsidies to companies. And then, hence, both regulators and governments insisted that companies that got subsidies may not pay dividends, right? So there was a shock in dividends, really an unprecedented shock to dividends. And the issue with the products, especially the French products, hence General, but I would say that affected the French banks in general, is those long-term autocallables on Euro stocks. So if you want to have a double effect when the market went down, which happened in 2020, you remember you had a sharp drop in the equity market. So there are two effects. First, at a constant maturity, if you want, right? When the market goes down, the risk on dividends increases, so all the banks become longer dividends. But on top of that, as the market goes down, the expected maturity of those autocallables increase, right? So you've got a compounding effect. So really the dividend risk exploded because of the market dropping, and then all the dividends got smashed, and it's a one-way street, right? So the banks, the French banks, at some point you have to cut your risk. You have to cut your risk because you exceed some position limits. So that's probably what happened. They had to cut probably at the low or close to the low, meaning dividend-wise. Hence the losses that got crystallized. So the risks are that you don't have an exposure to the real index, obviously, by construction. If you do an autocallable on Euro stocks, you look at the Euro stocks and this is your exposure. If you do something on Euro stocks 6% decrement or 5% decrement, this is the synthetic index that you have an exposure to. So this is a big difference, basically, right? You may not have the exposure to something you really know or can control. This extra risk is even bigger. Probably we are going to get there. Between the percentage decrements and the fixed points decrements, right? This is even maybe more difficult to comprehend, but basically the risk is that you don't have an exposure to the original equity.
Surely the dividend risk is then kind of shifted onto the investor side as opposed to the issuer side.
Yes, it's a way of saying it. Basically, if the investor doesn't really understand that his risk is not on the original index, but on the decrement index, yes, implicitly is taking the dividend risk without realizing it.